Asle kimmen der Freitag auf der Nacht. Der Tate mit die Kinder soll beacht. Singen sich zum Anliegen. Pflegt die Mama mit die Euren glacht. Zu bonken mit der Löffele. Der Tate mit die Finger in der Knack. Leg die Bobbe mit dem Keuterl, Schokle mit dem Käpperle, oi wei, wie Geschmack. Oi wei, wie Geschmack.
Baruch Hashem, welcome again to the Torah ben-Emmett YouTube channel. For premium subscribing members, you get instant notifications about the next exciting Torah Watchman installment. Tonight is a memorial day for the Jews. We have so many days of self-affliction, of mourning, inner reflection of the things that happened in the past to our ancestors. Today is the 22nd of Cheshvan, and we're finishing up this month. Pretty soon it'll be Rosh Chodesh. The calendar month, of course, is the 9th and the 10th. Something happened that we should have never happened before in history, okay? If you don't know your history, how are you going to prevent the same horrible things from occurring in the future? What I'm going to teach you today, unless you're Jewish, you probably never heard about it, okay? So what happened 82 years ago today, actually probably this evening, 82 years ago, take yourself back to Nazi Germany. The first attempt of Hitler, the Fuhrer, to take over Germany through a dictatorship, command rule of the state against private enterprise. We see that going on in Latin America, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and now we have a presidential candidate, unfortunately, in the United States is speaking the same language. So what happened during this time, 1938, by the way, the title of this Torah Watchman edition is The Highway to Hell. Very, very, very depressing name, but what I'm describing here is Kristallnacht, which means the night of broken glass. What am I talking about? First of all, let me give credit to Carol Jonka from my Jewish Learning. They had an abstract that actually came from the Jewish Britannica. Yes, we have our own encyclopedia of Jewish history. I'm not going to read everything to you, just the highlights here. First of all, there were thriving Jewish communities and businesses beginning the 1st century CE in Germany. It was known, I believe, as Suderland before that, you know. So when the Nazis were coming into power, it caught a lot of people off guard, especially caused alarm for the local European nations like France and Poland and Great Britain in that time. However, the U.S. government was very apathetic to this. In FDR's time, very isolationist. Always did a video about this. They didn't want to get involved in anything that was going on. To give you some context, Rabbi Meir Kahane was born in Queens around 1932. So I'm talking about an event that occurred in 1938. Okay, it was the beginning and the end of Jewry in Germany and throughout Europe, which led ultimately to the murder of the 6 million. May they all rest in peace. Baruch dying in that for them. So you can picture what's happening. A lot of these things happen iteratively, and they build into a climax. Some things you take for granted, even in the United States today, you say, well, it can never happen. It never can impact me. Why should I be worried about it? That's in Montana. That's in California. That's in Maryland. That's in Florida. That's in Louisiana. Yes, they vote the way they want to, but why does it impact me? Folks, the same thing was going on in Germany, especially for many Jewish communities there that were apathetic and they were being lulled literally to sleep because they had money in their bank account. They had nice homes. They had thriving mom and pop businesses. They had thriving schools, yeshivas, hundreds and hundreds of synagogues. Synagogues going back to the 1st century, folks. And they had ancestry there buried in generations of Jews that come and went and gone. And they were showing them honor by staying there. And it's hard to leave your roots when your great-great-grandparents, they were buried, in the Jewish cemetery close to your home synagogue. It's hard to let go of that. I'm not here to explain why the Jewish people did not see what was happening, because the so-called pogrom was actually an invasion by Nazi Germany upon the Jewish people. Now, we've seen this happen in other countries. We've seen this happen in the Soviet Union under the Lenin and Stalin reigns of terror, and the czars and everyone else that hunted down Jewish communities and burned them and took over the land and took everything else. Jews were identified as enemy number one, and Hitler thought he had the final solution. No, this is not Hamashoah, this is not Holocaust Memorial Day, but this is a historical event that ultimately paved the way to Auschwitz. Rabbi Meir Kahane was afraid of Auschwitz happening again. In America, especially in Israel, if people don't look at the warning signs, we know the prophet Daniel, there was a writing on the wall in the time of King Nebuchadnezzar, and that warning that his end was coming. If we think God is so hidden and uninvolved in our affairs that he's not interested in what's happening. We think that, he may have left us with autopilot, but, it's up for us to steer. And you see a dangerous cliff coming in front of you, maybe you should turn around and go the opposite direction. They talk about, and when I was in Japan, I was trained in aggressive driving techniques where you could see a problem happening several kilometers down the road. Where I'm going is here in Germany, in the beginning of the Reich. I think they had the Third Reich as a Nazi Germany expanded its war machine throughout all of Europe, taking over most European nations, even marching their troops into Moscow. Not going there. But the history of Jewish persecution probably reached critical mass in Germany during that time. Of course, we already know about 1492 when Columbus sailed his ships to discover the Americas. That was a great expulsion of anti-Semitism there by that Roman Catholic regime there. There was a Roman Catholic Nazi church actually in Berlin, and there was a Lutheran and Episcopalian churches there too that were all German, and many people were registered with the Nazi party. You think about registered with the Communist Party, the KGB, but this is the same thing, folks. So the Jews were considered as non-Aryan. So this was a dichotomy between Aryan and non-Aryan people. Now, this impacted not just Jews, but everyone that was considered too multiracial for the minimal standards of excellence by the Führer. So Jews began to leave Germany. Some of them left, and they went to other European countries like Poland. Some of them went overseas. They tried to go to the United States. Maybe some of them went to Palestine during that time, to Eretz Israel. But the population there dramatically fell. It was almost 500,000 people, Jews there, and then it gradually dwindled to about 213,390 by May of 1939. But what caused the population to decline from 564,378 Jews to only 213,390 Jews in Germany? Well, you had a massive invasion, a pogrom, as I said before, led by Hitler and his SS Nazi troops. They burned 7,500 Jewish homes and buildings, schools, yeshivas, burned or destroyed or seriously damage up to 1,000 synagogues or religious institutions. Even doctors, Jewish doctors, were not even allowed to treat their Jewish patients. All their money and the Jewish bank accounts, all the financial money changers, everyone, all that money was confiscated by the state. Now you consider a political situation in the United States where 50% of all your take-home taxes belongs to the federal government. Well, consider if 80, 90% of that is suddenly becomes part of that government, of that dictatorship. But this is what happened to Jewish people, and no fault of their own. The Nazi Germany needs someone to blame for their economic woes. Okay, World War I led a heavy toll with the German economy. Many people died in that war, an awful war. And decision made in ending in World War I led to the Holocaust and World War II too, that eventually forced FDR to admit there was a problem that he should get involved in after Pearl Harbor. So back to the Jewish situation here, there were various laws. The Nuremberg laws were passed, and the Iraq citizenship law. In other words, if you want to be a citizen of Germany, you better be an Aryan. Okay? You hear about apartheid. Well, this is actually apartheid against the Jewish people. Anti-apartheid, the same things in South Africa was known for. So reading through this information here, there was various stages of events, ultimately leading to 30,000 men, Jewish men, that were rounded up, put on a train, and put into a shtetl, or a ghetto. That's where the word shtetl comes from. I refer to it friendly, I live in a shtetl or an Arab in Kent Mill. Well, that word, that Yiddish word, actually came from 1938, 1939. These were ghettos. And you hear about African Americans in Queens and ghettos in New York and all this. Hey, they didn't invent the word. It came from Jews being rounded up, taken from their homes, with only a couple suitcases, clothes on their back. Women, young, old people, children, all rounded up and thrown in ghettos, waiting to be ultimately loaded into trains to concentration camps and gas chambers and everything horrific you can imagine. So this created a huge economic crisis and poverty. Many Jews died from disease and starvation from this situation. Again, this is 1938, November 9th and 10th. Cheshvan 22nd, toward the end of this month. This occurred 82 years ago. So if you wonder why Jews say Kaddish so much, and you see us davening and lighting Yorsak candles, and you see us going to our cemeteries to visit where our relatives are laid to rest, and you see Jews crying or weeping when you don't understand what's going on in their life, there's been a lot of pain and a lot of misery against the Jewish people. Anti-Semitism is what I'm focusing on here, and is where I'm trying to get to. Unbridled, unvetted, uncontrolled anti-Semitism will always lead to an Auschwitz. Okay? We saw what happened in Germany in 1938, 1939. We saw the lack of involvement by European countries like Great Britain during that time, especially the United States, that was controlled by Democrats. Unfortunately, FDR's administration and Congress and Senate, they had an isolation policy, and they were very proud of that. They had boats and ships and airplanes of Jews trying to escape during the same time, and FDR turned them all away. I had a video about that. Don't have to go down that path. But just consider that this is when the Nazi police took over. Even some of the Jewish men that were sellouts, they were either go to the ghetto and wait to die, or work for pennies for the German government, and they thought they maybe could save some of their Jewish brothers by volunteering to the police force. For context, I encourage you to watch Schindler's List, based on a true story. This exactly what I'm describing. the movie documents it very well. So again, we see that maybe the road of, sometimes, you hear about the road of good intentions leads to hell. There were no good intentions by the Nazi government at that time. It was prejudice and bigotry against the Jewish people. They actually were known as Yehudim. Very rarely do you hear Jews referring to themselves as Yehudi, Yehudid, Yehudim anymore. Yes, there's no J in Hebrew. We don't refer to ourselves as Hebrews anymore. The reason why that we don't focus us on as a racial and proud tribal creed of people anymore is because of what was taken away from us in Germany in 1938 and 39. We essentially are running scared. We're afraid. I was told before when I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, be careful, Keith, if you put an Israeli flag in your house, you make yourself a target. And I said, at least I will know who's friend or foe in my community, who's an anti-Semite, and who's a lover of Israel. That's the way I look at it. Unfortunately, I can be a proud Jew where I live, but not every Jew, like in New York City, Berlow Park, Crown Heights, and those other areas there, they cannot be proud Jews anymore. They can't assemble for a funeral. They can't assemble for a wedding without being arrested. Neighbors will rat on a Jewish family if they have 10 people in there. And police will come knock on the door and say, what are you doing? Why is it everyone wearing masks? In this nation, we're talking about a mask mandate that's forced on private American citizens by the federal government, by their own design. And who knows, may force a vaccine on the American people too. Already in the United States, they have something called Common Core educational system in our public schools. That's why my daughter will never go to a public school education. I will eat tomatoes every week to afford private education at my daughter's school in Kent Mill, the Silver Spring Learning Center. And it is, I just want to promote that place. It's a wonderful, wonderful school environment. Again, the same things, if you allow unbridled overreach of the federal government, they will literally tell you what you are allowed to feed your child in school. So-called food pyramid, well, that was not good enough. If you pack a meal for your child, the school administrator might tell you your child cannot eat that. They are forced to eat the food based on their policy. You're not allowed to be religious. You're not allowed to read your Bible. You're not allowed to pray. And a lot of public schools, you're not even allowed to say the Pledge of Allegiance. You're not allowed to have moments of silence and things of that nature anymore. In my school, in my age, when I went to public school, that was not an issue. It is now an over-control federal government. So consider, the United States was founded in 1776 to declare independence against Great Britain over the price of tea. Yes, and Massachusetts, the Boston Tea Party, yes, taxation without representation, caused a great civil war and independence movement, leading to the United States of America. Look what we have taken for granted for our states in our country, where you have states, some areas and states in this country are Jewish no-go zones. Try to go to Dearborn, Michigan. It's essentially a caliphate. And there's places like that, unfortunately, in the state of Maryland too. Be careful. No one would take my mezuzah off my door. No one would take my Israeli flag or American flag off my door, or they will have a Zionist fist in their face. We have to stand up and protect ourselves and stop saying Holocaust happened. I don't have anything to do with that. I don't have anything to do with terrorism against Jews in Israel. That's not my problem. Listen, the world is your problem, folks. Tikkun olam, whatever, if you're a no-hide Jew, a non-Jew, Christian, or whatever you call yourself at this point in time, just know that mankind is our business. The world is our business. Whether you're a Democrat, liberal, or Republican, or independent, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. Humanity is our business. Remember our history. Remember the Jews that were sacrificed, that were raped, women raped, children taken away from their parents, led into poverty and devastation. And on November 9th and 10th, 1938, on the 22nd month of the Hebrew month of Cheshvan. Baruch ben-Emmett for their souls, and may they have peace. Take care. This is ben-Emmett signing off again for Torah Watchman show. God bless you. Be healthy. Be well. Give charity. Give charity. Give charity. And never again means never forget. Be an elephant of truth. Inconvenient truth. Good night.